Between two great rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, a land of rich soil emerged. This land was called Mesopotamia, which means the land between the rivers. It is often called the cradle of civilization, and for good reason. Here, around 4000 BCE, people first learned how to build cities, create governments, and organize their lives on a grand scale. The Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians all called this Fertile Crescent home. They were pioneers in many fields. They looked up at the sky and mapped the stars, creating the foundations of astronomy. They developed complex systems of law, like the famous Code of Hammurabi. These ancient people were incredible innovators. They invented the wheel, which changed transportation and pottery making forever. They developed irrigation systems to control the river's floods and water their crops, allowing their cities to grow and support large populations. This stability gave them the time and resources to think about more than just survival. They built massive ziggurats, towering temples that reached for the heavens, showing their devotion to their gods and the power of their rulers. It was a world of constant invention, a place where new ideas could take root and grow, fundamentally changing how human beings lived together. One of their most important inventions was writing. Around 3500 BCE, the Sumerians began using a system of pictographs to keep records of grain and livestock. This system evolved into cuneiform, a script made of wedge-shaped marks pressed into wet clay tablets with a reed stylus. These clay tablets were humanity's first durable form of information storage. They recorded everything from epic poems like the Epic of Gilgamesh, to business contracts, to simple lists of goods. Scribes were highly respected members of society. They were the keepers of knowledge, the original data processors of the ancient world. The Mesopotamians laid the groundwork for so much of what we consider modern life. Their ideas about law, timekeeping, and science spread far and wide. They divided the hour into 60 minutes and the minute into 60 seconds, a system we still use today. Their stories and myths influenced later cultures and religions across the globe. They were a civilization defined by their ability to solve problems and share information. Their world was built on clay tablets, each one a small piece of a much larger human story. Without their contributions, our own world would look very different. They were the original architects of organized society. Now, let us ask a bold question. What if this civilization, already so advanced in information management, had taken one more giant leap? What if, instead of just storing information on clay tablets, they had found a way to share it instantly across their empire? Imagine a world where the Mesopotamians invented their own version of the internet. This is not a network of fiber optic cables and satellites, of course. It is something born from their own technology and their own needs. What if they had created a system to transmit the contents of a cuneiform tablet from the city of Ur to the city of Nineveh in minutes rather than weeks? This idea might seem like science fiction at first. How could an ancient society create such a thing? But the core concept of a network is not about electricity or silicon chips. It is about connecting points to share information. The Mesopotamians already had the components. They had a standardized writing system in cuneiform. They had a class of professional information handlers, the Scribes. They had major population centers, their cities, that needed to communicate. All they were missing was the final piece, a method for rapid, long-distance transmission. This is the great what-if at the heart of our story. Let us imagine a visionary scribe or a clever engineer in the city of Uruk, perhaps while watching signals from watchtowers or thinking about how to manage the king's vast records. The idea strikes. A network could be built, not with magic, but with clever engineering and organization. This invention wouldn't be called the internet. It might be known as the Eduba Tabalu, or the Tablet House Network. It would have been seen as a tool for the king, a way to manage the empire more effectively. But like all powerful technologies, its effects would soon ripple out far beyond its original purpose. This single invention would have set history on a completely new path. The slow, deliberate pace of the ancient world would have been shattered. Communication, which relied on messengers traveling by foot, donkey, or boat, would suddenly accelerate to an unimaginable speed. The consequences would be enormous, touching every aspect of Mesopotamian life. Government, trade, religion, science, and even personal relationships would be transformed. This alternate history is not just a fun thought experiment. It helps us understand the profound power of information technology, whether it is written on clay or displayed on a screen. What would this ancient internet have looked like? We can imagine a network of scribe towers built within sight of each other, stretching from city to city across the Mesopotamian plain. At the top of each tower, a team of scribes would work day and night. One scribe would use a series of polished bronze shields or colored flags to flash signals to the next tower in the chain. Each sequence of flashes would represent a specific cuneiform sign. It would be a slow, visual version of Morse code. The scribe in the receiving tower would read the signals and call them out to another scribe, who would quickly press the corresponding symbol into a fresh clay tablet. This network would be a marvel of organization. Each major city, like Babylon, Ur, or Akkad, would have a central hub, or great tablet house. This would be the main node for sending and receiving messages. From there, smaller messenger routes would distribute the freshly inscribed tablets to temples, palaces, and merchant houses throughout the city. The system would require a huge number of highly trained scribes. An entire new profession would emerge: the signal scribe, skilled in both cuneiform and the complex art of visual signaling. These scribes would be the network administrators and technicians of their day. The Cuneiform Web would be hierarchical. The king's messages would have the highest priority, able to clear the network for royal decrees or urgent military orders. Temples would use the network to coordinate religious festivals and share theological texts. Merchants would pay a fee to send trade orders and price information. A message could be sent with different levels of service. An express tablet might be relayed non-stop, reaching its destination in hours. A standard message might be relayed only during the day, taking a little longer. It would be a system built for efficiency, reflecting the Mesopotamian genius for organization. Of course, this network would have its own unique problems. A sandstorm or a foggy day could bring the entire system to a halt. A lazy or poorly trained scribe could introduce errors into a message, creating a data corruption that could have serious consequences. There might even be a form of ancient hacking. Rival cities or spies could try to intercept signals from a hidden location, or try to send false information to disrupt an enemy's communications. The Mesopotamians would have to develop systems of encryption, perhaps using code words or number substitutions known only to the sender and receiver, to ensure their tablet stream remained secure. The most immediate impact of the Cuneiform Web would be on governance. A king in Babylon could issue a command, and it would reach the farthest corners of his empire on the same day. This would allow for a level of centralized control that was previously impossible. Tax collection could be managed in near real time. Provincial governors would have to send daily reports back to the capital, making them far more accountable. The king could respond to a rebellion or an invasion with unprecedented speed, dispatching orders to his generals before the enemy even knew the capital had been alerted. The empire would be bound together not just by roads and rivers, but by invisible threads of information. The world of commerce would be turned upside down. A merchant in the port city of Ur could get the latest market prices for wool from Nineveh, or for copper from the mountains to the east. This would create a much more dynamic and efficient market. Merchants could make better decisions, reducing risk and increasing profits. They could form partnerships and arrange complex trade deals across hundreds of miles instantly. The concept of supply and demand would become much clearer. This information flow would likely lead to new financial instruments, perhaps even a kind of ancient stock market where shares and trade caravans could be bought and sold via tablet messages. This new speed would also change the nature of law and justice. Instead of waiting months for a judge's ruling to arrive from a higher court, a local magistrate could send the details of a case to the capital and receive a legal precedent or a final judgment within a day. The famous Code of Hammurabi would not just be a static monument of stone, it would become a living, searchable database. A scribe in a small town could query the central legal archive in Babylon to find the correct law for a specific situation. This would lead to a more consistent and fair application of justice across the entire kingdom. Daily life for ordinary people would also be affected, though more slowly. While most farmers and artisans would not use the network directly, its effects would trickle down. More efficient trade might mean more stable food prices. Faster government response could mean better protection from raiders. Families might even be able to send personal messages for a fee. A soldier stationed on a distant frontier could send a tabletgram home to his family, telling them he is safe. This would shrink the perceived size of the world and strengthen social bonds across great distances, creating a more interconnected and unified society. The great libraries of Mesopotamia, like the famous library of Ashurbanipal in Nineveh, were incredible repositories of knowledge. They held tens of thousands of clay tablets on subjects ranging from history and magic to medicine and mathematics. However, to access this information, a scholar had to travel to the library. With the Cuneiform Web, this would change completely. These libraries would become the world's first online databases. A scholar in a different city could send a request to the library, and a scribe there would look up the tablet, copy its contents, and transmit it back over the network. This would be a revolution for scholarship. Imagine for a moment a doctor in Sippar facing a difficult illness. He could send a description of the symptoms to the medical archives in Babylon and receive back a list of possible diagnoses and treatments from ancient medical texts. This would spread medical knowledge far more quickly and could save countless lives. An architect designing a new temple could request blueprints and engineering calculations from the most successful projects in other cities. This would lead to rapid improvements in building techniques and architectural styles, as best practices were shared and adopted across the empire. This on-demand access to information would create a virtuous cycle of learning. As more scholars accessed and used the information, they would also add to it. A new astronomical observation made in Ur could be added to the central star charts in Babylon within hours. A new legal ruling could be instantly added to the legal code. The great libraries would no longer be static collections of old texts. They would become dynamic, constantly growing and evolving bodies of knowledge, updated in near real time by an entire network of contributors. This would be the ancient world's version of a wiki, a collaborative project to document all human knowledge. Of course, this would also lead to debates about information control. Who decides what information is added to the central archive? Would the king or the high priest have the power to censor or delete information that they found inconvenient or dangerous? A new class of powerful master librarians or knowledge guardians would emerge, controlling access to these central databases. They would be the gatekeepers of history and science. The struggle for control over information, a key theme of our modern internet age, would have begun thousands of years ago on the plains of Mesopotamia. The rapid sharing of data would have a massive impact on Mesopotamian science. Astronomy, which was already highly advanced, would leap forward. Observatories in different cities could coordinate their observations of the same celestial event, like an eclipse or the movement of a planet. By combining their data, they could make much more accurate measurements. They could calculate the distance to the moon or predict celestial events with stunning precision. This collaborative approach would allow them to develop a far more sophisticated model of the cosmos, perhaps centuries or even millennia ahead of schedule. Mathematics would also flourish. The Babylonians were already skilled mathematicians, using a base 60-number system. The Cuneiform Web would allow mathematicians in different cities to collaborate on solving complex problems. They could share new theorems, proofs, and formulas instantly. This would accelerate the development of algebra and geometry. They might even begin to explore concepts like calculus to describe rates of change, a tool that would be incredibly useful for their advanced astronomy and engineering projects. The network would function like a massive, distributed supercomputer, with human minds as the processors. Culture would become more unified, but also more diverse. While the dominant culture of the capital city would spread more easily, the network would also allow regional cultures to share their unique traditions. A popular song or poem from a small village could be transmitted across the network and become a kingdom-wide hit. Different artistic styles in pottery or sculpture could be shared, leading to new hybrid forms. The Epic of Gilgamesh might have sequels and spin-offs written by authors from all over the empire, creating a shared literary universe. The network would act as both a great unifier and a great amplifier of cultural expression. However, this rapid cultural exchange could also lead to social friction. Imagine a form of ancient social media. People could send short, public messages, like tweets on a clay tablet, to be displayed in the public square. This could lead to public debates, celebrity scribes with thousands of followers, and the rapid spread of popular opinions and rumors. A piece of fake news, or a scandalous rumor about a public figure, could spread across the empire in a day, causing social unrest or political problems. The Mesopotamians would have to grapple with the same challenges of misinformation and public discourse that we face today. The existence of a Mesopotamian internet would have dramatically altered the course of history for neighboring civilizations. Imagine the Egyptians seeing this incredible communication network in action. They would be forced to either adopt the technology or be left behind. This could lead to an information arms race in the ancient Near East. The pharaohs might create their own hieroglyphic version of the network to manage their kingdom along the Nile. This would accelerate technological development across the entire region, as empires competed to build faster and more secure communication systems. The spread of writing itself would be supercharged. The Cuneiform Web would demonstrate the immense power of recorded and transmitted information. Neighboring peoples like the Hittites or the Elamites would have a massive incentive to adopt writing and plug into this network. The very idea of an alphabet, a simpler form of writing, might arise much early as a way to make using the network easier and faster. This could lead to a far more literate ancient world, where knowledge was not just the property of a small elite, but was accessible to a much broader segment of the population. Later civilizations like Greece and Rome would inherit a very different world. They would not be inheriting a world of scattered texts and slow communication. They would inherit a world with a long tradition of networked information and collaborative science. Greek philosophers like Plato and Aristotle would not just have access to a few scrolls in Athens. They could tap into centuries of Mesopotamian scientific and historical data. Roman engineers would use the network to manage the construction of their roads, aqueducts, and legions across their vast empire. The entire intellectual and technological foundation of the classical world would be elevated. This alternate timeline could have prevented the so-called Dark Ages. The fall of the Western Roman Empire was accompanied by a catastrophic loss of knowledge. But if that knowledge was not just stored in a few libraries, but was distributed and copied across a vast, resilient network, much more of it would have survived. The knowledge of the ancient world could have been preserved, ready for the civilizations that followed. The scientific revolution and the Enlightenment might have happened hundreds of years earlier, built upon a continuous, unbroken chain of knowledge stretching back to the very first cities of Mesopotamia. While the Cuneiform Web would bring many benefits, it would also create new divisions in society. The most obvious divide would be between the literate and the illiterate. In our alternate history, the ability to read and write would become even more critical. Scribes, and those who could afford to hire them, would hold the keys to this new world of information. They would be the ones who could access market data, legal knowledge, and news from afar. The vast majority of the population, the farmers, laborers, and soldiers who could not read, would be left on the other side of this clay tablet divide. This inequality would create new social tensions. The information-rich elite could use their advantage to accumulate more wealth and power. A merchant with network access could corner a market, driving smaller, unconnected traders out of business. A nobleman could use inside information from the capital to acquire land or political favors. This could lead to a society that was even more stratified than it already was. The gap between the haves and the have-nots would no longer just be about land or money, but about access to information itself. This could fuel resentment and social unrest. There would also be a geographic divide. Cities and towns located along the main network routes would prosper. They would become vibrant hubs of commerce and culture. But what about remote villages in the mountains, or isolated communities in the desert marshes? These places might be left off the network entirely. They would be cut off from the flow of information, becoming technological backwaters. This would create a stark contrast between the fast-paced, interconnected networked world and the slow, isolated, unnetworked world. Young people would likely leave the villages to seek their fortunes in the connected cities, leading to a decline in rural areas. Furthermore, the network itself could be used as a tool of oppression. A king could use it to spy on his own people, monitoring communications for any sign of dissent. Propaganda could be broadcast across the empire, ensuring that everyone received the official version of events. The network that connected the empire could also become a cage, a system for surveillance and control that would be difficult to escape. The Mesopotamians would have to confront the dark side of information technology, its potential to be used not just to enlighten, but also to control and divide. Exploring this alternate history is like looking at our own world in a distorted clay mirror. The story of the Cuneiform Web shows us that the challenges and opportunities of technology are universal. The Mesopotamians in this imagined past would have grappled with the same issues we face today. They would have worried about misinformation, data security, and the digital divide. They would have seen how technology could create immense wealth and knowledge, but also how it could create new inequalities and new forms of control. The tools may be different, clay tablets instead of smartphones, but the human questions are the same. This journey back to an imagined Mesopotamia highlights the profound role that information technology plays in shaping civilization. The ability to communicate and share knowledge is not just a convenience, it is a fundamental driver of social, political, and economic change. The speed at which information moves determines the speed at which a society can evolve. By accelerating this process, the Cuneiform Web would have put Mesopotamian civilization on a fast track, for better and for worse. It demonstrates that any technology that changes how we share information will inevitably change everything else as well. Ultimately, this thought experiment teaches us a valuable lesson about our own time. We are living through a period of technological change that is just as revolutionary as the invention of writing or the imaginary Cuneiform Web. We are the first generations to navigate the world of the modern internet, social media, and artificial intelligence. We are facing our own challenges of misinformation, privacy, and the digital divide. The story of the ancient internet that never was serves as a powerful reminder that we are not the first people to stand at such a crossroads. Looking at the hopes and fears of this fictional ancient network, we can see our own reflected back at us. It encourages us to think critically about the tools we are building today. What kind of world is our own internet creating? Is it bringing us closer together or driving us further apart? Is it empowering individuals or concentrating power in the hands of a few? The Mesopotamians built their world on clay. We are building ours on silicon and light. The materials have changed, but the responsibility to build a just and equitable society with the tools we have remains exactly the same.